All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of So Recently. I'm Matt, and I'm here with Miranda,
Hello.
and we are here today to talk about kind of what we've been up to recently. As has been alluded to on several podcasts, I have been watching a pretty well-known TV show called One Piece, and it's maybe well-known in like the community that like Miranda and I are part of, which is just being nerdy, but it is popular, and it's a huge undertaking. I'm like halfway through it, and so I wanted to talk with Miranda a little bit about One Piece because I think it's great. I think she should watch it, but you have your reservations, right?
Yeah, and I just want to point out that we're talking about the anime, not the Netflix adaptation.
Yes.
Which I do think has helped it grow in popularity to people who maybe not have, known it. Like I had never seen the anime, but we're talking about the anime that I don't think I'll watch.
Hopefully I'll change that. I don't know. We'll see. I like can't recommend it, and I also want to recommend it. So that's what the goal is today. Is I'm gonna recommend why you should dedicate an obscene amount of hours to watching a show that I think is really good, and I don't know if that's necessarily gonna be the tough argument. It's gonna be to convince you to actually put in the time because
Yeah.
it is a hurdle.
The thing that's going to be hard for you to convince me of is the needed time to watch the show, and I am a very stubborn person.
Yeah, I know.
Now here's the thing, Matt. Here, I'm just gonna beat you to the punch. There's a better chance that I'll just watch the One Piece.
Yeah, so for listeners that don't know what we're talking about, they're doing a new anime. So they're basically redoing all of One Piece, new animation, basically trying to condense the storylines from what I can tell. It honestly is probably going to be the best way to watch it, assuming they keep all the music and stuff, because I think that's a big part of what makes One Piece so great. But assuming they do that, which I imagine they will, it'll probably be a pretty good way to watch the show. But either way, we're going to do this because it's a good thought experiment. It's fun, and I like the show. So
I'm ready to hear your points. You have the stand. Convince me.
Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about what types of anime you've watched.
Okay.
So what are your favorite types of anime shows?
Favorite types probably like action, adventure, fantasy, magic, probably. Because my immediate thought is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is my favorite of all time. I love that story.
Yep.
And then other ones, I like Jujutsu Kaisen. I like Frieren. I like. What else are we watching? I don't know. Those are the three that I just thought of.
But a lot of like shonen anime, like main hero fights villainous people.
Yeah, but I will say
save people or whatever.
I got tired of My Hero Academia.
Yeah, and I've been watching My Hero Academia, and I definitely think One Piece and I really liked My Hero Academia for a long period of time, and I'll still
same.
finish it.
I have a poster of it, and I got autographs from the English voice actors. Like I absolutely love that thing. But
me too. Yeah.
I just got tired of the show.
Yeah, it's definitely something that weirdly felt overlong early to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly why that is. But I'm going to argue that One Piece doesn't feel that way, which is maybe a losing argument to start because for those of you who don't know, One Piece is like, I believe, 1,200 episodes right now. It's a lot. I'm currently at, I think, 592. So I'm pretty far in, and I'm watching with my wife.
Applaud for Matt. Woo.
It's a big undertaking, and I'm pretty far in. I'm watching with my wife, and we really like this show. So the first reason that I think you'll like One Piece is I think it does everything that you like about your favorite animes better than they do. So to start, I think the characters are better.
Okay.
So immediately you have your core crew that you're introduced to. So you have Monkey D. Luffy. He is a pirate. He wants to be the king of the pirates. And I guess maybe I should say any sort of background about the show. Basically, all of the pirates in the universe are trying to navigate the seas to find a big treasure called the One Piece because a famous pirate left a treasure for people to find before he was executed. So you've got Luffy, and he is kind of a happy-go-lucky kid pirate. If you've ever watched like Dragon Ball, obviously it's very similar to Goku. And I know you enjoy Goku in Dragon Ball, even if you don't like always love Dragon Ball, right?
I mean, okay, Dragon Ball's another show that I just like. We're watching the new one, the Dragon Ball Daima. Yeah, we're watching that right now.
Oh, okay.
Cool. And we're mostly just watching it because I find Dragon Ball one of the animes to just put on and laugh at and just be like, this is fun. Like, I'm not, you know, I'm not really into it, but like, I'm here for, you know, tiny child Goku beating up adults. It's great.
Right.
Yeah, Luffy definitely gives me Goku vibes, but instead of big muscle boy, he's stretchy boy.
Yeah, he's very skinny. And he is kind of like this like lanky kid who is basically like Goku in a lot of different ways. So he's very tenacious. He's very determined.
Always hungry.
Like even more so than Goku, which is crazy.
Which is insane.
Yeah. And basically his whole gimmick is he just like picks someone to fight and will just like fight them. Kind of like Goku, but like obviously, Luffy is going to be different in some ways to Goku. I think the big way is he's like simultaneously more and less serious, and he also feels a little bit like more dumb. Goku is at least like somewhat wise to things happening, and Luffy really isn't.
He's kind of oblivious.
Yeah, one of the things that's kind of funny about the show is he doesn't really understand how the world works for the majority of the show. Like, you'll have character introductions or lore introductions about, you know, a particular character's status in the world, and he won't be familiar at all with what that even means because he's just completely oblivious. And it's like very funny. It's played for laughs, and somehow it doesn't get old.
Oh, okay.
So I really enjoy that. And then he basically is like meeting characters along the way. So he gets, you know, connected with Nami, who is kind of like the cat burglar type, but she also is their navigator eventually when they start sailing the seas. You have Zoro, who's a bounty hunter, who's a swordsman. He's very cool. He's kind of like the definitive swordsman in anime, in my opinion, outside of like maybe like, I don't know what the character's name is in Bleach, but if it's Bleach, Ichigo, yeah, he's probably not that definitive, but I would say like arguably at the same status because everyone knows who Zoro is.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've never watched One Piece. Well, I've seen the Netflix adaptation, but I knew who he was before that. Like, I've seen his image everywhere because it's Zoro. So
I actually saw it on the back of a pickup truck the other day,
which
I thought was a little bizarre. It was like a very specific scene in One Piece, and I was like, that's a interesting choice for a pickup truck, but cool, awesome. Man. Like, you do you. So there's like Zoro, he's kind of your like tough as nails pirate swordsman.
Yep.
And then you have Usopp, who is kind of just like the joke character, and he likes to lie, he's scared of things, he tells fake stories all the time, and it's just like keeps going throughout that, you know, throughout the show. And then there's Sanji, who's the cook, and the Sanji is like debatably my favorite and also like my least favorite character because he can be very smitten with women in a way that is funny and then in a way that is very not okay. So he's a little bit of a mixed bag, but those are like your core crew.
He's kind of the classic anime man.
Yeah, for better and worse. So, but that's like your core crew, and then they've kind of expanded on the characters from there too. So like that's your main crew that you saw in the One Piece live action show, but there'll be more characters that they add. The crew has kind of like steadily grown throughout the show.
Right.
And so they're just like really fun characters, and I think they're all like very typical characters, but their backstories are awesome. Like every single character has a backstory that by the end of their backstory arc, I tend to feel like I could cry. It's so good.
Okay.
Like almost every single one. There's like only one character who doesn't have that in-depth of a backstory, but they like keep getting progressively more and more heart-wrenching. So every time they go over a character's backstory, it's like, oof, okay, now this reframes a lot of things for me, right? So I think the backstories are really good, and I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about One Piece is while the main plots are good, whenever they pull it back, you get a lot of in-depth insight on a character, and I think that's really fun.
Okay, that's good. That's a good point because, you know, having a main story is one thing, but having good subplots and just good B lines being good as well, that's a good sign.
Yeah. And I think it makes the banter better because then when you understand the characters better, obviously, it all comes together a little bit more neatly.
Okay.
That all being said, the B storylines and the backstory plot is really cool, but the main plot, especially the overarching plot of the what's happening in the world building, is definitely better than any other anime I've ever watched. Like, far and away better. It's kind of insane.
What about it is so good? What about the main story is just like, dang, this story is so good. I want to come back and watch it for another 1,000 episodes and more because it's still running.
It's still going. Yeah, so I think what's really cool about the show is as you start, the show is like very simple, kind of like Dragon Ball is at the beginning. And I'm going to compare it a lot to Dragon Ball because they tend to be compared a lot, and like I think there's like far and away a clear winner in like what's the better show. It's like not even close. That being said, I like Dragon Ball as well, but it starts as like a very simple process, right? Like I gave you the initial pitch, which is just pirates are out sailing the seas to find the One Piece.
Yes.
And so when you initially kind of hear that, it's like, okay, this is a really simple storyline. There's going to be fun little adventures, and they'll be like your traditional, like, they have to fight a character, they have to fight a big pirate, they have to fight somebody on the seas, right? But they keep layering in more and more and more and more story and more background for the world that just kind of changes the themes of the show, and it changes the seriousness of the whole process, and also changes a lot of the implications for like, well, what is the One Piece, right? Because they've never actually said, and it's kind of critical because it definitely feels like it has a lot more to do with the state of the world than just, hey, this is a really cool treasure. And so I don't know, I think you just kind of tend to see, like throughout the show, like more and more evidence for why the world is really messed up in One Piece, and more evidence as to why the One Piece must be something that's critical to that whole world situation.
Okay, so it's a story that evolves.
Yes, but I know that happens in other shows, but like it has been consistently crazy that I've watched this many episodes and I come away every new reveal like, oh my god, this reshapes all of what I know.
Okay.
I think what's really cool is they just keep adding on, and it doesn't ever feel like, oh, this feels tangential, or this feels like we're going into too much depth on something that doesn't matter. Like it almost always feels like, oh, this is actually critical to what is happening across the whole world. So I really love that. They kind of frame certain factions and sides as villains that, as you kind of go through, maybe you get a lot more understanding of them and they're a little bit less villainous. But there's definitely sides that are framed initially as the good guys or the heroes that definitely are not the case, right? Like as you keep going, there's some pretty dramatic swings in who are the bad people in One Piece, and it's pretty dramatic and they get pretty aggressive. And I think there's a lot that the show tries to say. I'm trying not to like spoil stuff. I'm sure you know a decent bit about One Piece because your boyfriend read the manga or reads the manga actively.
He's been reading the manga, and I mean, I was talking about it with him the other day actually because I knew we were going to do this episode, and he was like trying to remember, like he's like he was showing me pictures of character, like his favorite characters, and like he was trying to remember like all their abilities, and then he was talking about other people. He's like, I don't know if Matt's gotten that far though. I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm not bringing anything up that James has told me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think there's a lot that happens in One Piece.
Oh yeah, like James was saying, he's like, I don't even know if I can remember all the characters because there's just so many characters. So you just kind of lose track of people. But he showed me like 3 of his absolute favorites. He's like, this person's so cool, this person's so cool. Like, oh, but and they're like people I'm sure are not in it for at least for a while. So
hard to know though, because that's the other thing that's really cool about the show is they will introduce a character and you'll think they're like mildly consequential, and as you keep going you'll be like, oh, this character is so important. Like this is like one of the most important characters they've ever introduced. Why did they just,
nonchalantly do it?
Yeah, and they'll reveal things that you'll remember have happened 200 episodes back. And you're like,
Dang.
man, they're just getting back to this now. But I think what's really cool is it always feels like they have gone back to it. So unless they completely drop the ball at the end, he is like going through and finalizing story threads and making sure that everything kind of is tightly wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
But just some of the reveals I've gone to halfway through are insane.
Okay.
And I felt that way like 100 episodes in when they would reveal stuff. I was like, wow, this is really cool and this is interesting. And yeah, it just kind of keeps going from there.
Okay.
So I definitely think the world building is a big part of why I like the show. I also think the fights are fun. I know that there's a lot of shows that have really good fights and really good animation. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I would necessarily say One Piece is at the top of that level. Like, I think My Hero Academia has really fun fights. I think that, you know, other shows, Full Metal Alchemist is great.
Did you ever watch the Jujutsu Kaisen Shibuya season?
I've seen, no. And I've heard the fights are insane.
That was a crazy fight.
Yes. And I know, like, Demon Slayer as well has great fights, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
Demon Slayer's got pretty good fights, yeah.
There's definitely, like, good animation and good, I think, good stakes that they always add in. Mm-hmm. I do think that the stakes in pretty much, not every fight, but, like, in the critical fights in One Piece always feel so high and so elevated. There was, like, a 100-some episode string that I watched with Molly that basically built up to one final big battle. And it was insane. It was like the craziest stuff. And by the time they laid out the stakes of what was happening, right? Like 50 episodes in, the stakes completely flipped and got way larger and way more dramatic than they ever were the first 50 episodes in.
Oh, okay.
And so they do a lot of like cool stuff where the little bits of information that they'll reveal about characters just make the fights so much more impactful.
Okay.
And like part of like anime and why we like it, we talked about this in one of our podcasts, is like the heightened animations or heightened emotions, me. And One Piece really does that well, but it's one of the few shows where like I feel bought in entirely when they flip the script and suddenly the emotions are higher. There's usually a good reason for it, and I never feel like it's like, oh, this is kind of melodramatic. Like this is like serious stuff we have to focus on.
Okay. I got you.
So that's a little bit of my arguments, I guess. What are like the big holdups for you, I guess, about One Piece? I know you said the episode amount.
Yeah.
I think the episode count is a struggle that like probably anybody has. So like, fair.
Look, if there's I mean, you know, when we were watching Dragon Ball, like you, me, and Nick found like the abridged version, and that might help.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm probably more inclined to watch the One Piece.
The One Piece.
Because that, and also it'll be a different art style, different animation.
Yeah, and you don't like the art style as your other thing.
I really don't. Like, I've seen clips of, like, early, like, season 1. Like, James showed me, after we watched the Netflix adaptation, he wanted to show me kind of, like, what
the show is like.
Well, they teased in that one the next baddie, the smoke guy. Did
they do that at the end of the live action?
Yeah.
Huh.
Didn't they? I'm pretty sure they did.
I don't remember that.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
cool.
So James was like, "Oh, he's cool." So he showed me like a little bit of that episode of like when they were fighting.
Oh, cool.
And so I was like, I don't like the style, and like nothing against the artist. I'm sorry. Like it's just, and I'm sure if I really wanted to, I would get used to it. I'm sure I would. But between that and just knowing that it's a huge commitment, and I have way too many other shows that I want to watch, and I know for a fact, you don't need to convince me to watch it. You need to convince James to watch it.
James to rewatch it or to
watch it, because he's reading the manga and he has no desire to watch it right now, and I will never see him again if I decide to watch One Piece. So I told him. So here's the thing. You have to convince him, and you might have to convince me to actually watch the One Piece. Because I still might not do that. But who knows? Maybe you'll convince me to give it a try, and I'll get sucked in, and I'll hate you for it. Or I won't get sucked in, and I'll be like, Matt, I don't get it. It's fine.
I think if you watch it as it comes out, maybe that is the best way to go, because I don't know exactly when that's releasing.
Yeah, I don't either.
And I think when it does release, the first season is going to be pretty light. Not a whole lot happens in comparison to what happens later. The first season or first like arc is like essentially what was covered in the live action, so it's not necessarily anything that's going to go too in the weeds with like the world building. It's a lot of like, let's form our crew, right? Like form our pirate crew.
Mm-hmm.
But from there, the show definitely builds a little bit of interesting backstory. And then the first big arc, which is I think what they're getting to in the live action next season, has a lot of really fun like political drama. So it kind of builds into this like, without going into too much detail, like kingdom-wide struggle that they're trying to resolve, and it just becomes so much bigger than them. And yeah, while they're involved in it, it's like the fate of this whole country that they have to take care of, and like them being there and trying to stop one person basically dictates like if this country is going to completely collapse, which I think is really fun, because it's not like they have to go after the king, right? It's like they have to go after a person who's doing something that's like kind of throwing the whole nation into turmoil.
Yeah.
Which I think is super fun. And so like then you build a little bit more backstory, but then as you keep going, like right at the end, they're going to introduce some things that reframe what you thought was important about the show, and then add in more stuff. And then the next arcs, they just keep doing that.
Okay. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I enjoyed the Netflix adaptation, the live action. So if anything, I'll watch that. But that's easy to binge.
That's fair. I think another thing that is going to be interesting with the live action specifically is some of the characters are, I mean, spoilers for anybody who cares, are not human. And I'm very interested to know what that's going to look like in a live action show.
Me too.
Because I don't think Netflix has the budget to do that well.
Yeah.
And I just think it probably is going to look weird.
I have faith that it'll, I mean, look, it's going to look weird no matter what. But yeah. I don't think it's going to look bad.
I hope not. Yeah, I think the characters that fall into this, like, are fun characters, and I would hope that it doesn't look bad. But yeah, there's like continuing problems with some of the live action stuff. I could see the budget just not stretching to meet the moment of the show. So yeah. That all being said, though, I think, you know, there's just so many good arcs in the show. I would say another big reason why anime is fun is there'll be particular arcs that people talk about.
Yep.
And in One Piece, like, the worst arcs are still as good as a lot of the shows that we enjoy, or that other shows we've referenced. Some of their like better arcs, I would say, like fit alongside like some of One Piece's worst arcs, which is insane to me. The worst arc in One Piece is called Thriller Bark so far for where I'm at, and it's bad, but it's not horrible.
Okay, what's bad about it though?
It's kind of stupid. So typically the reasons I think any of the arcs are bad is when they don't really advance the actual storyline too much of One Piece. And yeah, that's not always going to be possible, but when it like slows down for like 60 episodes, right? Like that's a problem, especially if there's not a whole lot happening outside of the one place that they're at.
Yep.
So that's why I don't really love Thriller Bark. But at the end of the arc, they added a lot of interesting stuff. So they like know how to keep you there, but a couple times it does slow down. And like right now, where I'm at right now, it's called Punk Hazard, and it's fine. It's not my favorite arc.
Okay, so One Piece is just a like what's the best like a crane game where you keep trying, you keep putting your time and money into it, and every once in a while you move it a little bit, and sometimes you win a prize, and then you get addicted to it.
No, most arcs are good.
One Piece.
Most arcs are good. I will stand by it. The worst arcs are, again, still not that bad. That one is not amazing, but like even within that arc, there's a lot of fun and interesting things.
Right. So
it's just by the end of it, it's like
you're saying the worst part about One Piece is that it can sometimes get a little weighed down and stretch a little too thin, like Luffy's arms.
Yes. Yes,
that's
exactly.
Fair. I mean, you're at like over 1,000 episodes. I would imagine it's got to be a little bloated, which is why I'm more excited for the One Piece to hopefully be less bloated, to even give me a chance.
A lot of it suffers, like especially where we're at right now. A lot of the One Piece like bloat is them doing the classic anime thing where the episode doesn't start until 6 minutes in because they're doing recap of the previous episode.
Oh, I hate that though.
And then we get to a spot where they have to re-say something that was just said in the last episode.
Which, to be fair, when it's released weekly, I understand. But now that you can binge this stuff,
binging
but that's not just One Piece. That's other animes too that do it. I'm just like, come on, I don't need this.
It's more of I think, a product of the fact that it's weekly releases, not, just a big dump. Because, if it was all available super quick, I'm sure they probably wouldn't feel the need to do that.
No.
So that would be, like, one of the big downsides. But, like, honestly, that's, like, the majority of downsides I have with the show. I'm trying to, like, keep away from some of the spoilers. Do you care if I talk about any of them?
No, not at all. I just don't know if the listeners would really care. Because James has told me stuff, so...
Okay.
Because I asked a lot of questions when we watched the live action, and then he just kind of started going off and talking about it. And I have a theory. I think I know what the One Piece is. So
okay. Well, I will. Well, don't tell me, because maybe he gave you more information than I have.
Did.
But what I'll tell you,
I won't say anything.
What I'll tell you is, or listeners, is if you want to stop listening, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about some of the plot. But if you don't care, keep listening, I guess. So I think one of the really interesting things with the show is everything they do with the Navy and the world government, or the Marines, I should say. And so unfortunately it's dubbed differently depending on which site you watch it on. So they've been called the Marines for like the whole show up until now, and now it's always referred to as the Navy on Crunchyroll, which is really annoying to me. But anyway, so one of the things that I think is really cool about the show is when you first set it up, pirates are outlaws and they're like robbing, towns and everything. So it's a little bit more obvious as to why the Navy is going after them. And, you have these Marines who are coming in and shutting them down, and they're trying to capture Luffy. And it seems a lot more like, hey, this is a big misunderstanding, right? Like, Luffy's not actually robbing anybody, really. Like, I think they robbed people one time. And the time that they're robbing people, the people were about to give them an even bigger reward for helping them, and they decided to be pirates and rob them instead. So basically, they lost out on money because they tried to be thieves, and they could have just got more money by accepting the gift.
That's really funny. No, something that I will say that I like about at least the Luffy is that he wants to be the king of the pirates, but he is so not a pirate. Like, he's like refuses to do anything that is like stereotypically a pirate. And I think that's hysterical.
He says, like, the main reason he wants to be a pirate is for freedom, like, just total freedom, and not, like, I want to go get a bunch of money, which I think is cool. Like, he just wants to be the most free person there is and, like, able to do his own thing, which I think is super cool. But yeah, as they introduce the Marines, right, you kind of build a little bit more and more until the point where the Marines suddenly are not really the best people, and you kind of say, like, oh, like, some of these people aren't great. But then at a certain point, it's gotten to the point where the Marines are just the bad guys.
Yeah.
And, like, so obviously the bad guys that it, like, kind of reshapes a lot of what they were doing in the earlier episodes. Mm-hmm. And it's just really fun. I don't know, that, like, you have these Marines who are, some of them, like, characters that you liked or you thought were like, oh, these guys are, like, kind of the good, these Marines are good people. They understand that Luffy's not a bad guy. And then they've kind of just reframed it to be like, no, they're actually part of the bad guy faction, and you should have known this the whole time. They're actually really bad people, and, hyper aggressive and hyper violent. Yeah. And I think it's just really fun because, I don't know, like, I feel like having the pirates not necessarily being the bad guys but still being outlaws is fun, and other pirates are definitely outlaws, but then some of them are also bad guys and worse than the Marines, and some of them are outlaws and they collaborate with the Marines, and there's just so much going on and so much interplay that
there's just so many different layers of good and bad and all in between.
Yeah, and some of the characters are just like such enigmas where you're like, I think you're a bad guy, but like I can't quite tell because I kind of agree with you on like half of what you're doing, but I don't know if I like what you're doing and how you're doing it, but also I can't say you're wrong. So I just think they make a lot of really complex characters that are not necessarily the typical ones you see in anime.
Like, it's not just all the main characters are complex, some minor characters and whatnot.
And it's also just not like like, I know there's animes that have really detailed plot, like Full Metal Alchemist, I'll still stand by, has like probably the best, most concise front to back story of any show. But for a show that is as long as it is, and for a show that is competing more with like the Dragon Ball than the Full Metal Alchemist, right? Like it's definitely more of a shonen. This airs weekly.
Yep.
We're here to provide a fun fight for kids to watch, adults to watch, whoever's watching, right? Just the amount of depth and detail is just like so cool. It just makes it so much fun. So I don't know. I mean, I know I realize that I've just kind of ranted about why I like One Piece, and I don't know if I've made a compelling argument, but I do think that if there's anything you can get from this, Miranda, you should watch the One Piece when it airs and just keep up with it. Just keep up with the show, because it's going to be a lot more manageable. The episodes are like 20 minutes long. And at the point where I'm at, like, this is definitely like the best show I've watched in a long freaking time.
Okay.
And it is so much fun, and it's kind of actively ruined a lot of the other animes I like, because now I'm just like, I don't care. I just want to watch One Piece. It's so much better, which is fun. So.
But I feel like that's a tip in the don't watch it. You know, if it's that
but
good, it'll ruin anime forever, Matt. And I like anime.
It might, but fortunately, to counteract that argument, there's 1,200 episodes of One Piece, so you don't have to worry about it ruining other anime forever, because it's all of anime.
It's
so
every
much.
anime you'll ever watch. Yeah, no. I think I'm good.
Well,
if I were to watch the One Piece, again, we're going to have to convince Jamie, because
I think he'll watch that.
He might see. I think he'll see how what people are saying about it when it actually is. I just looked it up, and it's still in production, so there's no release date at all. So we're probably years out.
I do think like
Netflix, I'll still watch the live action one. That's been fun. So
something about like manga and anime, because I know a lot of people like read the manga, and I've never really been. I've read a little bit of manga, but like not nearly as much. I know you've done a lot more. Yeah. It's like I always just love watching the animation and like listening to the music. So like that's a big part for me. So hopefully that's something that can convince James that like, hey, I know this story. I'm going to stick around because I want to see it like play out, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure you can convince him, or I can convince him, because I don't think he even remembers like the beginning of One Piece. Like I'm pretty sure he's just like, when was that? Like,
fortunately, and that's like one of the funny things about One Piece is like there's so much stuff that happens that like Molly and I were watching something the other day, and they introduced a revelation about a character we met before, and I was like, wow. That's crazy. And then I sat there for a second and was like, wait, is this other character also this now? Like, and that hadn't happened for like 150 episodes. But I was like, wait a minute, God. Did that already happen too? And Molly's like, I think so. I don't know. And so like, there's so much stuff that it's just like, half the time it feels like they have revealed stuff. And then they just reframe it because they're like, you forgot about this, didn't you? So.
Okay, well, there's a lot of episodes, so I imagine that does happen.
Yeah, I love it. Highly recommend it. It's funny, though. One Piece, like, fans, it seems to me so far, are, like, very proud of being caught up with the show, if they are. Case in point, I've talked to some students, because I work with students. And I talked to a couple students that I've seen, and like both times that I've commented on the fact that they're like wearing One Piece merch, they'll say, yeah, I'm caught up.
They're very proud of it.
It's so funny because it's like you don't say that with any other show.
No, it's like, oh yeah, what's up? My Hero Academia? Yeah, I'm caught up.
Yeah, no, like literally I talked to somebody recently and I was like, oh hey, I like your sweatshirt, and they're like, oh yeah, thanks, I'm caught up. And like I was like, that's bizarre. Like what a weird thing to say to like a random person who's like, hey, I like your One Piece merch, and they're like, yeah, I'm all caught up. Like I don't know if that's just like a look, we did it, we made it through, or if it's more of like don't spoil anything, or like I can't be spoiled.
I can't talk to you because I'm caught up and you probably aren't.
That might be it. It's just funny. It cracks me up quite a bit.
That is really funny.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed because it's like happened like 3 times. So I mean, I don't know.
That's actually really funny because I don't think I've ever once had that interaction, because I've commented on people's anime merch or whatever, and no one has ever said I'm all caught up.
Yeah, like
if anything, they go, "Oh, do you like that show too?" Yeah, and then we bond over it. Like no one ever says I'm all caught up.
Yeah, literally the only thing. Yeah, like I talked to a student who's had had like the straw hat that Luffy wears, And I was like, oh, hey, is that a Luffy hat, like a straw hat? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you know? I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'm all caught up. It's just so funny. It cracks me up.
That's so good. Oh my goodness. Well,
So,
Matt, you made some decent points.
Yeah. I wanna for the listeners just wanna say if my points didn't seem good enough, I'm sorry. I would like to have another chance down the road to convince you, Miranda, since I didn't this time.
Mm-hmm.
But next time I'll come with more specific examples. I was trying to keep it a little bit more broad because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. And when you get so broad, I think you just end up talking about like the characters are good, but the characters are so good and the relationships are so good. And literally the show almost makes me cry every like 30 episodes, which is insane. That doesn't happen with other shows.
That is a lot of crying.
It doesn't make me cry, I should say. I haven't fully cried yet, but like there's definitely been a lot of like, ooh, this is a tearjerker moment, like this is tough, which does not happen for most shows for me. So like they pull at your heartstrings, which I like.
Okay. Well, I'm not gonna watch it.
Oh, killing me.
But like I said, I'll keep watching the Netflix adaptation because that's actually really fun. And maybe when the One Piece comes out, maybe I'll watch that. But that's as far as I'll go. I don't think you're going to convince me to watch One Piece right now.
I will add, I wasn't making a lot of progress watching it on my own, and it was a lot easier because Molly's watching with me actively now. So
okay, but that's another point. You gotta convince James, or it's never gonna happen.
I understand where it's easier for me to advocate when I'm not doing it on my own and like telling you to just like go hunker up in a room and do it on your own. So
yeah, basically, I'd only watch it when he has D&D, which would be most Wednesdays,
like once a week.
Yeah. And I can only binge so much, you know.
That's
Sometimes
true.
I need to do other things, like play video games, or like
I can respect that.
You know, do other things that isn't focus on a show.
That's fair. This is the only show I'm currently watching, so it makes it a little bit easier now that we've caught up on everything else that we watch. So yeah, but well, cool. Well, thank you for listening to my rants about One Piece. I do hope for listeners, if you haven't listened or haven't watched One Piece, you give it a go.
I would say,
and
at
if
least
you really
check out
aren't convinced, check out the live action because, especially if you like don't like anime or you've never watched it and you're like, I don't know if that's the right step for me, give it a go. I don't think it's the same. I don't think it like hits on the same highs, obviously, but I do think they do a pretty good job and it's a lot of fun. So definitely a good spot to start. So.
Yeah, as someone who's not going to watch One Piece, I would highly recommend the Netflix adaptation because it's good. Especially for an adaptation. It is actually very good. So James gave it his approval. So
I would say from what I've seen, there's not much I can really fault it on. Like I have my qualms, but I have my qualms about anything I watch. So yeah, it's good. Definitely give it a go. But I think with that, that's all my points for today. Next time we'll come back with a new topic. I think it's your turn probably to
I think so.
Tell me what you've been up to.
Yeah.
So we can do that next time, but for now, thank you for listening, everybody. I'm Matt.
I'm Miranda.
Thanks for listening to So Recently. See y'all later.
Bye.